In a small, shadowy room inside the Church of the Sacred Heart of Suffrage in Rome, there is a glass case that contains something impossible. It is a prayer book, centuries old. But it is not the prayers that draw people from all over the world. It is the mark on page 200. A human handprint, burned into the paper as if the hand were made of molten iron. But this wasn't created by a fire in a hearth. Witnesses and the church records say this mark was left by a soul. A woman named Sister Maria, who appeared to her fellow nun from the other side of death to ask for prayers. She touched the book, and the heat of her suffering left a permanent scar on the physical world. We like to think of the afterlife as far away, a distant shore we only reach when we die. But the mystics, the saints, and the evidence in that room in Rome suggest something else. They suggest that the suffering souls are right here, next to us, separated only by a thin veil. They are the church suffering, the forgotten souls. And throughout history, God has allowed certain saints to peel back that veil and step into their world. What they saw there is terrifying, heartbreaking, and ultimately filled with a hope so intense it burns. One of the most vivid accounts comes from Saint Faustina Kowalska, the Secretary of Divine Mercy. In 1926, she was only a young nun, but her soul was already being prepared for something heavy. She writes in her diary that one night, her guardian angel appeared at her side. He didn't say a word. He simply gestured for her to follow. In a moment, she was no longer in her cell in Poland. She was in a misty, cavernous place filled with fire and smoke. But the fire wasn't empty. It was crowded. She saw thousands of souls, suffering in an agony that she said was indistinguishable from the pains of hell, except for one thing. There was no hatred. Faustina walked among them, shielded by her angel. She asked them, "What is your greatest pain?" And they answered with one voice. It wasn't the fire. It wasn't the darkness. It was longing. They were burning with a desperate, unquenchable hunger to see God. She saw the Virgin Mary visiting them, bringing moments of refreshment like a cool breeze. And the souls called her the Star of the Sea. But here is the part that should shake us. Faustina heard them praying. They were praying fervently, but not for themselves. Their prayers had no power to help them anymore. They were praying for us, for you and me, waiting for us to offer the one thing that could unlock their chains, our own prayers. But what is this fire? Is it a vengeful punishment? Saint Catherine of Genoa, a mystic from the 15th century, was given a profound understanding of this mystery. She explains that the fire of purgatory is not God torturing the soul. It is God's love. Imagine a soul that has just died. It sees God for a fraction of a second in His absolute, blinding purity. In that light, the soul suddenly sees itself clearly. It sees every stain of selfishness, every small attachment to sin, every moment it chose comfort over charity. And because the soul now loves God more than it loves itself, it cannot bear to embrace Him while being so dirty. So, the soul throws itself into the fire. It wants the fire. Catherine says the pain arises because the soul's desire for God is infinite, but its ability to reach Him is held back by these impurities. The fire is the friction of God's love burning away the rust of sin. It is a pain of delay. Imagine being starving to the point of death, and seeing a banquet table right in front of you, but being unable to take a step until you are clean. That hunger is the fire. And it is a fire that burns hotter than any physical flame on earth. Yet the souls would not leave it for 1,000 worlds, because they know it is the only way home. In the 20th century, the veil between these worlds seemed almost non-existent for Padre Pio. The Capuchin friar often said that he saw more souls from purgatory climbing the mountain of his monastery than he saw living pilgrims. One evening, Pio was alone in the choir loft, praying. He heard a noise down by the main altar. It was the sound of candles being moved, the shuffling of feet. He looked over the railing and saw a young monk he didn't recognize, dusting the altar and arranging flowers. Padre Pio called out, "Hey, what are you doing?" "It's late." The monk looked up, his face pale and sad. He said, "I am a friar who did his novitiate here long ago. My duty was to care for the altar. But I was lazy. I passed the altar without bowing. I let the dust gather. I lacked reverence for the Lord in the tabernacle. Now, I am allowed to return here to clean, to make reparation. But I cannot leave until a Mass is said for me." Padre Pio, without hesitation, promised to offer the Mass the next morning. The monk smiled and vanished. The next day, after the Mass was celebrated, the sounds in the church stopped. The debt was paid. This story tells us something terrifyingly specific. We are accountable for the small things, the lack of reverence, the laziness, the things we think don't matter. In the eyes of eternity, everything matters. If we go back further, to the 14th century, we find Saint Lidwina of Sciedam. Her visions give us a geography of this spiritual state. Her guardian angel took her on a journey that terrified her. She saw a vast prison, enclosed by high walls, filled with a black darkness. This was the lowest level of purgatory, dangerously close to hell. Here, she saw souls who had converted only at the very last moment of their lives, who had lived entirely for themselves until their final breath. They were safe from hell, yes, but their purification was agonizingly slow. Then, the angel led her higher. She saw a place that resembled a vast lake, grey and foggy. The suffering here was less intense, but the sorrow was palpable. These were souls who were attached to the world, who loved their families more than God, who held on to grudges they thought were justified. And finally, she saw a region that looked like dawn, a place of pale light. The souls here suffered only from the longing, the waiting. They were the ones almost ready. Lidwina was told that her own physical suffering on Earth she was bedridden and paralyzed for decades could be offered to lift souls from the pit to the lake, and from the lake to the light. She realized that the body of Christ is connected. When we suffer here, if we offer it up, we are literally pulling our brothers and sisters out of the fire. There is a reason St. Nicholas of Tolentino is the patron saint of the holy souls. It started with a nightmare. A friar named Pellegrino, who had died weeks earlier, appeared to Nicholas. But he didn't look like the man Nicholas knew. He was engulfed in flames, his face twisted in pain. He begged Nicholas to celebrate a Mass for me. I am in such torment that if you celebrate the Eucharist, I will be freed. Nicholas wanted to help, but he was assigned to sing the conventual Mass for the week, which was a strict schedule. He couldn't just change the liturgy. He told the Spirit he couldn't do it. The burning friar looked at him and said, "Come with me," in the vision. He dragged Nicholas to a plain stretching out to the horizon. It was filled with thousands of people, crying out, reaching their hands toward him. The friar said, "Look at them. They are all waiting for your help. If you offer the Mass for us, many will be released." Nicholas woke up, shaken to his core. He went to his superior, weeping, and told him everything. The superior, seeing his distress, granted him permission to say the Mass for the dead all week. 7 days later, the friar Pellegrino appeared again. This time, he was shining like the sun, surrounded by a crowd of other souls, all ascending to heaven. This event birthed the tradition of the Sant. Nicholas Breda Euro, blessed bread, given to the sick and poor, offered for the souls. It taught the Church that one Mass, one single drop of the blood of Christ, has enough power to empty a vast portion of purgatory, if only we would ask. In the 17th century, a Polish priest named Stanislaus Papczynski had a vision that haunted him for the rest of his life. He was at a gathering with other priests, laughing, eating, enjoying the fellowship. Suddenly, he froze. His eyes locked on something no one else could see. He saw the souls of soldiers dying on the battlefields of Europe, falling into purgatory like leaves falling from a tree in autumn. Thousands of them. He turned to the other priests and shouted, "Pray, brethren, pray. You have no idea how many souls are suffering right now." He became obsessed with praying for the sudden dead Euro, those who died in war, in accidents, without time for the last rites. He would often lock himself in his cell for days, doing penance. He said that the Virgin Mary revealed to him that the souls in purgatory are her most beloved children because they are helpless. They cannot merit anything anymore. They are like beggars with their hands tied. They rely entirely on our charity. Imagine a beggar on the street who is starving, but he has no mouth to ask for food. That is a soul in purgatory. You have the food. You have the rosary, the Mass, the simple ejaculatory prayers. Will you walk past them? Or will you feed them? This connection between the living and the dead goes back to the very beginning of Christianity. In the year 203, a young noblewoman named Perpetua was in a Roman prison, waiting to be thrown to the wild beasts. She kept a diary, which we still have today. In prison, she had a vision of her younger brother, Dinocrates, who had died years earlier of facial cancer at the age of 7. In the vision, she saw him coming out of a dark hole. He was hot, thirsty, pale, and dirty. His face still bore the horrific cancer that killed him. There was a pool of water nearby, but the rim was too high for him to reach. He was stretching, trying to drink, but he couldn't. Perpetua woke up, crying. She understood immediately that her brother was suffering in the afterlife. Even though she was terrified of her own upcoming execution, she began to pray day and night for him. She offered her tears and her fear for his soul. A few days later, she had another vision. This time, Dinocrates was clean. He was well dressed. The cancer on his face was gone, replaced by a scar. And the rim of the pool was now low, down to his waist. He drank the water with a golden cup that never emptied, and then he ran off to play. Perpetua wrote, "I knew that he had been released from punishment. Think about that." A sister's prayer changed her brother's eternity. It changed his condition from thirst to satisfaction. The early Christians knew this. They didn't just bury their dead. They worked for them. One of the most powerful traditions we have for the holy souls comes from Pope St. Gregory the Great in the 6th century. Before he was pope, he was the abbot of a monastery. One of his monks, a man named Justus, fell terribly ill. On his deathbed, Justus confessed that he had hidden 3 gold coins in his medicine, jar euro, a serious sin against the vow of poverty. He died without being able to make full reparation. Gregory was tough. He ordered that Justus be buried in unhallowed ground to serve as a lesson to the other monks. But Gregory's heart was also that of a father. He felt a deep pity for Justus's soul, fearing he was suffering greatly in the fire. So, Gregory ordered the priests of the monastery to offer Mass for Justus every single day for 30 days straight, without missing a day. On the 30th day, Justus appeared to his biological brother, Copiosus, in a dream. He said, "Until now I have been in bad case, but now I am well. For today I have received communion." Copiosus ran to the monastery to tell the monks. When they checked the records, they realized it was exactly the 30th day. Justus was free. This is the origin of the Gregorian Masses a Euro, a series of 30 consecutive Masses offered for a single soul. It is considered one of the most effective means of emptying purgatory for a loved one. It shows us the power of consistency. Ita Euros, not just about a fleeting thought. Ita Euro is about a sustained campaign of prayer. Let's return to that room in Rome, the Museum of the Holy Souls. Ita Euro's small, just a single corridor in the back of a church, but the items there are haunting. There is a nightcap that belonged to a man named Monsieur Leleu in Belgium. In 1789, his deceased mother appeared to him at night. She had been dead for 27 years. She grabbed the sleeve of his nightshirt and begged for masses. When she let go, her hand had burned through the fabric, leaving a perfect scorch mark of 5 fingers. There is a small wooden table from a convent in Italy. In nearly the same era, a deceased abbess appeared to her successor. To prove she wasn't a hallucination, she placed her hand on the table. The wood is carbonized in the shape of a hand, and you can see the texture of the skin. These artifacts are physical warnings. They tell us that the spiritual world is not airy-fairy. It is dense. It is hot. It is real. The Church keeps these items not to scare us into submission, but to wake us up from our materialism. We live as if this world is the only thing that matters a Euro, our careers, our houses, our politics. But these scorched fingerprints scream the truth. Only holiness matters. Only love survives the fire. So, what can we do? The saints didn't just leave us with stories. They left us with tools. Saint Gertrude the Great, a German Benedictine mystic, was told by Jesus that every time she prayed a specific prayer, he would release 1,000 souls from purgatory. 1,000. Imagine the power of that. The prayer is simple. You can say it in 20 seconds, Eternal Father, I offer thee the most precious blood of thy divine Son, Jesus, in union with the Masses said throughout the world today, for all the holy souls in purgatory, for sinners everywhere, for sinners in the universal church, those in my own home and within my family. Amen. Why is this prayer so powerful? Because you are not offering your own merits. You are offering the blood of Jesus. That is the currency of heaven. It is infinite in value. When you hold up the blood of Christ to the Father, he cannot refuse it. You are literally paying the debts of strangers. Imagine arriving in heaven one day and being surrounded by thousands of people you never met on earth. People from different centuries, different countries. And they tell you, I am here because of you. You said that prayer on a Tuesday morning in 2024, and my chains fell off. There is an even deeper level of generosity called the heroic act of charity. This is for the brave. It is a vow where a Catholic tells God, I offer all the value of my prayers, my sufferings, and even the prayers said for me after I die, for the souls in purgatory. I keep nothing for myself. It sounds terrifying, doesn't it? If you give everything away, won't you burn longer when you die? The saints say no. They say that God is not outdone in generosity. If you empty your pockets to pay the debts of his prisoners, do you think he will let you suffer in prison? No. The priest who promoted this, Father Gasquet, said that those who make this act often escape purgatory entirely, because charity covers a multitude of sins. It is the ultimate trust fall. You are saying, Lord, I care more about your suffering children than I care about my own comfort. That attitude is exactly what heaven is. By making that act, you are already aligning your heart with the temperature of heaven. The doctrine of purgatory is often misunderstood as a gloomy, scary teaching. But if you listen to the mystics, it is actually the greatest masterpiece of God's mercy. If purgatory didn't exist, who among us could hope to see God? Who among us is perfectly pure? Without purgatory, there would only be heaven for the perfect, and hell for everyone else. Purgatory is the proof that God doesn't want to lose us. He created a place where we can be fixed. But he left the door open for us, the living, to help. The souls are waiting. They are your grandparents, your friends, the soldiers who died alone, the forgotten ones who have no one to pray for them. Tonight, before you sleep, say one Our Father for them. Sprinkle some holy water. Offer your small headaches, your tiredness. Don't let their fire burn without relief. Because one day, you might be there, and you will be scanning the earth, looking for a light, looking for a voice, looking for someone who remembers. Be that someone today. If this reality moved you, if you want to be part of this army of prayer, subscribe to the Stigmata channel. Share this video. Euro not for the algorithm, but because someone needs to hear this to save a soul today. Pray for the dead, and they will pray for you.